The American dream had always been form a family, buy a home, raise your family there. It was your piece of land. And not only is the family under attack, that's a whole political discussion, but the idea of buying your own home and living in it and being able to own it is also under attack. And unfortunately, a confluence of the press and our government and the news industry and big corporations are working together to get people to accept a lower level dream. I don't think it's worthwhile, and I don't think people know about that. That's why I want to discuss that today on my weekly real estate market update. I'm Bill Gross at Bill Gross Probate. Now, to set the table, let's make sure we know where the market is and look at the current statistics. In an economy, I would say there's two aspects. There's the buyers and sellers, and that determines where the market is. Buyers in real estate are determined by interest rates, the intensity of it, and sellers are measured by the inventory. So let's take a look at those statistics. On the buyer side, interest rates closed up last week. Closing up slightly at 7.14% after being just below 7% at 6.9 or so for the last couple of weeks. Now, as you can see, for overall, the ratio is still below where they were the second half of last year, though they're higher, the highest they've been so far this year. So I don't know that necessarily the trend is up or the trend is down or in the middle of that, but it certainly is worth noting. If you're buying a house and you had shopped for a rate, and you don't know if it's locked in, you want to check. And if you're a seller, you want to check and see if your buyer's rate's locked in or not, because this is a change and it might be a precursor of more changes going forward. So that's going to slow down buyer interest a little bit. We saw that it went from fairly intense to down a bit. We'll talk about that in just a second. Now, on the inventory side, which is sellers willing to sell houses, that number is still low by all-time numbers other than during the pandemic. The current amount of inventory, about 450,000 homes for sale, is lower than last year's by a little bit, and then lower than, but higher than the pandemic years 2021, 2020, 2019, but lower than the prior years of 2018 and 19 by about 40%. So we have very little inventory. As long as we do, that will stop housing prices from going down, but will also stop sales from going up. So we're in this position where sales can't go up and the prices can't fall, and we're probably going to continue in this dysfunctional level for a period of time until those two factors change. Over on Los Angeles specifically, if you look at our local market, and real estate is very local, our market, according to Altos Research, which does a great job analyzing these things, has our market at a 40, which is the same as last week. Now, it had been inching down 43, 42, 41 to 40 by the end of the year, went down below to 38, but back up to 40, and that's where we are right now. So it's a slight still seller's market. One of the key stats I watch is dollars per square foot, which jumped up unexpectedly, but then last week came down to $833. So it's lower than last week's $843, but it's still higher at $833 than it had been at $787 just about a month before. So something to watch. I think part of that is more homes are selling in the higher end than before. Also, more homes are being finished rather than being sold as fix and flips. But overall, the market is a seller's market, though not as intense as 2 years ago or 3 years ago, not as intense maybe as a year ago, but still a very solid seller's market overall. Now, one of the factors that really affects interest rates, and you see this all the time, they'll say the job numbers were up, and so interest rates shoot up, or the job numbers are down, and the interest rates go down. It's really affected by job numbers, but this shows really, I think, the unfortunate reality for most Americans, because when jobs go up, the fear is there's more money being created. Interest rates have to go up to slow down the economy. Well, that might be true if the money was in our pockets, but the reality, at least according to a survey done by, I lost the name of the company again, the Center for Immigration Studies, shows that most of the new jobs are really going to immigrants, both legal and illegal, but mostly, illegal included. What you can see is that the employment increases for immigrants in the last year or two are still, while Native Americans, they still are losing jobs. So there's no replacement of jobs by Americans. We're almost at a break-even where as many are losing jobs as gaining them. But the job gains are immigrants. And what this tells you is the job numbers affected by legal and illegal immigration are causing rates to be held high, hurting those people looking to buy houses. Very unknown fact, but the Center for immigration study put that number out last week. Very interesting, I think, number overall. Okay, so if you follow me at all, you know that one of the companies I take to task regularly is Zillow. I think that in their history, they've been a force for bad in our real estate economy. During their time period, real estate industry has become dysfunctional. No more home sales now than when they started. And I think that they're very political and as a result are hurting our citizens rather than helping them overall. One of the things I found funny was when I read last week an article referencing the Real Estate Bill of Rights. Now I need to pull this up real quick. The Real Estate Bill of Rights. And what they say is that they're committed to certain values. And then what I wanted to do was kind of have a little bit of a laugh as I looked at those values to talk about how they compare. Oops, I lost my spot there. Zillow consumer values. Here you go, our values. Well, you know, it's so funny. The passage got lost. I don't know what happened. I have it in my email. For those of you who get it, oh, there we go. I got it right here. Okay. I'm sorry for the delay. Technical difficulties, everybody. And then let's put this down and let's bring this up. And there you go. Real estate rights for consumers. Let's see how they're doing. 1, access to information. So what they're saying is, and this was their original value proposition, that Zillow was going to give consumers more access to information than they had before. Now, they say in their rights that we believe consumers should have easy and fair access to all available real estate information. Well, I think every company wants to put all the market data they can. We all, as agents, want listings up, whether it be new home buyers, new construction. So that just kind of describes their job, right? Their job, since they're not selling houses, is to make information available. Okay, so that's interesting, but I don't think it's not controversial. Independent representation. This one's fascinating. We believe buyers and sellers should be represented by an agent who works solely for their best interests. Now, it doesn't really say whether you can do that with both at the same time. Generally, I think agents should not represent the buyer and the seller. I only do that in very rare circumstances, only with the prior approval of my client, which is usually the seller. Why? Because it's very hard to represent the seller who wants top dollar and the buyer who wants to pay as little as possible and the loosest terms. It's almost impossible to do. So they're right about that. But one of the fascinating things about Zillow is they just sell leads. They don't take that consideration when they sell leads. They'll sell leads to agents that list property and the leads on those listings to those same agents. They don't care. They're just selling the leads. And so if you want to say, well, who are the forces? I think I'm held accountable when I represent a family or represent an estate and I talk to an attorney. They ask me, are you representing the buyer? And I always will say the truth. It's usually no. Unless the answer is yes, because it's a small deal or complicated deal, but very rarely. But Zillow here is the opposite. They're one of the forces of double-ending deals because listing agents put the listings up, and there's many who feel they're entitled to represent the buyers in their deals. I don't, the opposite. I try to find other agents to take over those buyer leads for me. So really, that's their principle, but they really work to the opposite of their principle. Next, here's one, fair and transparent compensation. Consumers should know who pays these fees and that they are negotiable. Now, interesting. First off, I would say, okay, is the commission on the Zillow website? Maybe they're not allowed to post it, maybe they are. But more than that, how about the other fees? So, for example, for the longest time, Zillow had lenders. Now, they really masterfully took advantage of buyers because they would have lenders who would play liar's poker by lying about the rate, get the lead, bait and switch the customer, but Zillow got paid for the lead. Now, Zillow recently has changed that. They bought a lender, and they call them Zillow Home Loans. Now, you have buyers who are getting home loans through Zillow. And now you have realtors who are buying leads from Zillow, getting incentives to push the buyers to Zillow Home Loans. You know, when I ran a real estate company, we couldn't push buyers to a lender. We had lenders who could provide service, could meet with them, could offer assistance, but I couldn't steer them in exchange for compensation. But here's Zillow, the real estate lead company, is also getting paid to send the lead to a realtor. And I'm sure they're picking those that support Zillow Home Loans, and they don't disclose that to their customers. So again, I think there's a noble causes on their website, but like many companies, I think, and they in particular, I think fall really, really short. Okay, next in the news, You may have heard about this commission lawsuit that's going on and is threatening to disrupt the internet. One of the things I find funny is there are certain companies that make a living bashing realtors, and yet they get business from us. One of them is Inman. I don't understand these guys. They sell their news or their website information or their emails to mostly real estate agents, and they have events mostly attended by realtors, but they regularly really beat up on realtors, I think, unfairly. Now, I'm not against holding us accountable when we do bad things. I'm against us being unfair. I think this one is just really, really bad. Here is Meet the Broker getting ahead of the post-Sitzer commission rush. The Sitzer commission rush is the lawsuit, or one of the lawsuits, or the most prominent lawsuit on commissions. And so they want you to believe that these guys are geniuses because they have decided to lower their commission to 3.5% to cover both buyers and sellers, and they probably keep them proprietary in their own MLS or whatever they do. But I got to tell you, I've been in this business since 1986. This idea has been around the whole time. The reason why the rate system is the way it is most of the time, and there's exceptions. There's all kinds of exceptions that people try, including these guys. But the reason why the most predominant result is the most predominant result because it works best most of the time. It's as simple as that. Now, it's interesting to me that here Inman is quoting these guys like they invented fire or something. And the breathless reporting says the brokerage is creating all kinds of fire by offering, what was it? They said they're marketing in mail and social media. Well, everybody markets their propositions in mail and social media. I don't see what's innovative. So again, we've had companies that offer to list property in the MLS for $350 and recently $500, all the way to charging 10% commissions, everything in between. We've seen it all. This is nothing new. Why is Inman presenting as new? I'm going to bet that the broker is either a subscriber and or attendee at their events. And if not, I'd just say, shame on you. This isn't news. And to say they're getting ahead of the rush, I'm sure one has nothing to do with the other. But again, this is just the industry taking its opportunities to bash realtors, which is part of apparently the real estate news industry. Okay, also in the news, talk about some bad guys. Here's one, that major real estate firms are defendants in 118 data privacy lawsuits. Now, this is something that you're not going to see unless you really get into the weeds in real estate. But companies like CoStar, Zillow, First American Financial, we've talked about before, CoreLogic, Atom Data. These companies gather data and sell it to customers. And imagine that, this private data gets hacked. Imagine that. Your information, you own property, somebody died in your family, your spouse information, your phone number, last four of your social security number, cell phone numbers for cold callers. This data that these companies sell and accumulate and use for customers, and they are so reckless. And the truth is, if they get sued, they just go to business and merge with somebody else, and the executives get jobs at the new company. So they're really not defending our data. At the same time, the regulations have made it very difficult. And so you have 118 different lawsuits. We have a whole industry of attorneys attacking real estate vendors. We have a whole industry of attorneys attacking real estate brokerages. You might notice we have a whole industry of attorneys attacking everybody. And I don't think any of them do anything to protect our data in this case or help us sell houses. But anyhow, it's just interesting. These companies, including Zillow, have been reckless with their data. And it looks like somebody's attempting to keep them held accountable for that. Next article, very interesting, I found, is that in the Alice in Wonderland world of commission lawsuits, the Department of Justice wants to prohibit real estate companies from offering cooperative commissions. Now, as a listing agent, I just took a new listing this week. I put in the MLS, and what I do is I'm offered a commission, most commonly 5%, and I take half of it and I offer it to buyer's agents to get them to bring offers. And that's been the most common, the most productive for the standard listings that gets the best results for everybody, including my customer. It's my job to get the customer the best result. But here you have the Department of Justice advocating to prohibit that system. What they're saying is, now these are attorneys who probably either never bought a house or maybe bought one house in their life, maybe sold a house once in their life, but they're geniuses. They went to law school, and they're saying, because they have to win this lawsuit to get their career advanced, they're not all concerned with the housing market or the effects on people buying houses. They're saying that buyers should negotiate their own commission with the professional real estate agent. Now think about that. Your first-time home buyers who've never bought a house before, many of whom, according to our government, need government grants, subsidies, special programs, special waivers. But they're supposed to be savvy enough to negotiate the commission rate with a buyer to come out ahead than what the agent would have done had it already been the MLS. That's just stupid. I mean, really, these attorneys are just stupid. The whole idea of the government attorneys in a lawsuit forcing a change in law like this, the problem here is we don't have our Congress nationally or states involved in writing laws to protect customers as well as protect the business and create an environment where business can compete effectively. And absent that, attorneys will jump in and make everybody's life miserable. The only people who win will be the attorneys. Okay, now, overall, the theme of this week's email is the attempt to destroy the American dream. And I believe our government, news agencies, and big corporations are all working together to get us to accept the lower standard of living so they can keep more of our money. What do I mean by that? Well, here's an example. Fortune, which used to be a force of capitalism and investment information, the Wall Street killed the American dream of home ownership. Notice it speaks about it in the past tense. Did it kill it? Right? And it kind of psychologically implies it's dead. Who killed it? Not is it dead, right? It's purposely designed to imply almost, not 100%, but almost imply that that dream is dead. And that's Fortune magazine. That used to be a beacon of capitalism. Now, if you read the article, not necessarily that I recommend, I would never pay to go behind their paywall, but if you read the article, what they say at the end is, of course, Wall Street, their customers aren't responsible. Well, who is? Well, when you read it in detail, what they say is that the regulators haven't allowed building enough houses. And as a result of that, not enough houses causes problems like housing prices go up and people can't afford them. And so in the last paragraph, how did it get so expensive? They put that information there that's about the zoning laws. Well, who's that? It's the people that we elected, it's our government officials working against us, making it harder for us to buy homes. Okay, also the news, here's an example. This is what the world wants you to live in. The Great Compression. The New York Times, again, I'm not going to go behind their paywall. They're not worth it. But these are 400 square foot homes on 1,400 square foot lots. They're moving homeless people into them. They're not even for sale for the most part. They're being bought by government agencies or subsidized by government agencies to help solve the homeless problem. So they're not building regular homes for homeowners and taxpayers. They're building these homes for homeless and migrants, and the government is going to do it rather than the free market system. Show me a country in the world where the government built the housing for the majority of customers. There's no such example. Never happened, never going to happen. Okay, next, here's an interesting one. NPR. Hottest trend in the U.S. cities, changing zoning rules to allow more housing. Well, that sounds good. Doesn't that sound good? They're going to change more zoning laws. What they should say is, and what they don't tell you is, government's doubling down on restricting the housing people want and forcing the housing people don't want. And when you read the article, what you find out is that somehow these government officials magically discover, as a result of their laws, housing isn't being built. Well, that's because they don't want housing built. And so their answer is to have more high rises and more rental units being built for low-income people. So they're not stopping. They're not saying, hey, we've destroyed the housing market. Less people buying houses, that's the problem. The NPR article has to be written in a way that makes it look like the government agencies are discovering the solution to the problem. This is the problem they caused by design. They don't want us to own houses. They call it urban sprawl. They want us to all live in high rises next to metro stations. And hey, if you like that lifestyle, good for you. Nothing wrong with it. I've never had a customer ask me to buy a high-rise condo other than in oceanfront properties or in downtown LA, or maybe I imagine downtown Manhattan a lot. But generally speaking, that's not what the American dream was built on. Here's another piece of corporate trickery. This one's really Zillow, kind of under the guise of Housing Wire. California high costs aren't deterring Gen Z from moving there. Oh, wow. It sounds like more people moving to California. Not true. What they're talking about is net migration. You have a lot of people leave, 200,000 people leave. You have 40,000 people come back. So net, you've lost 150,000 people. But of those people moving in, they're not deterred by high costs. So you have 200,000 people leaving because of high costs. You have 44,000 coming back. And the article in Housing Wire, because Zillow fed them the line, these people are shows for Zillow, California high costs aren't deterring Gen Z from moving there. It caused them to leave, but it's not causing them from not moving there. Well, and then also in the fine print, about 2/3 down, again, behind the paywall, is 77% of people moving here are renters. So why do people leave? I can tell you, people who own houses here can cash out their house and buy a nicer house for less, pocket the difference. One of my best friends just did that. Nobody moves there to buy a more expensive house. They move to buy less expensive housing. The people moving here are getting a good salary, but all they can afford to do is rent. So somehow Housing Wire says, well, the high cost isn't really deterring them because they're glad to pay rent when they move here. These people, they're just so openly dishonest. Their agenda is so obvious. I don't think they understand we can pay attention. Okay, so here's another one. If you live in LA, we have a homeless problem, right? Well, I guess not really, because we're just going to move them into a hotel. The LA Grand Hotel is now, and what's funny about that is the kickback. So the LA Grand Hotel is this beautiful hotel on Figueroa. I've passed by it many times. I thought it was beautiful. You know, beautiful pool, conference rooms, dining rooms, gyms, lounges and such. Fantastic hotel. It's basically empty now and only being served for homeless people, I guess. And it's so bad that the union is complaining that they want to pay more money because taking care of homeless people is more expensive than tourists. So of course, tourists come in, they leave for the day, they do business, or they go to entertainment and come back in the day. But homeless people live in there all day long and probably doing other things that tourists aren't doing in the building. What's particularly funny here is the union that's complaining about this work and on strike, Unite Here Local 11, of course, they are the people who helped elect Mayor Bass. So basically what you have is the local government, Mayor Bass and her constituents complaining they're not getting paid enough to run a hotel for homeless people on Figueroa in what used to be a beautiful prime hotel in downtown LA. Does any of that make sense to you? Because to me, this just all screams crazy train. The union's not getting paid enough to service because the homeless costs more to put in a hotel. Maybe, does anybody think here maybe a hotel is not a suitable place to put homeless people or migrants? I don't know. Call me kooky, that entered my mind. And I think lastly, I think USA Today, which is the bubblegum of the brain of news organizations, says out loud what the goal is for our ruling class and politicians and corporate companies, which is the least affordable housing market in recent memory, why now is a great time to rent. Oh, just rent. Everything's okay. Just lay down and give up. Don't pursue the American dream. You should just rent. It's a great time, according to USA Today, to rent. It's a great time. Now, why would it be a great time to rent? What about renting is good? Do you get better tax treatment? No. Do you have long-term equity? No. Do people who rent homes in the area have the same commitment that homeowners do? Well, generally not. Nothing against renters. But in general, people own something or more committed to it. So why would USA propose that? Because they're all in on the same game. Their advertisers are Zillow, and Zillow gets placed in USA Today, and Housing Wire runs Zillow stuff, and Zillow runs ads on Zillow. The whole thing is all interworked, and they all support the same electoral politicians who all have the same game in mind, which is because they're failing at running our economy. What we need to do as citizens is lower our expectations and accept a lower standard of life. And I'm not going to do that. And I don't think you should. I think what we're missing are people saying, and one of them is Grant Cardone in my life. We're missing people who say, you can achieve anything if you bring your mind to it, business-wise, certainly buying a house. You just have to sacrifice, cut expenses, save money, work hard, make money, put the two together, and own property. How about start small, invest in property with your money as you work your way up. Plenty of people can invest in REITs, in small funds, in portions of property together. But no, USA Today says, it's a great time to rent. Well, I don't think so. I think it's always a great time to buy if it's a good time for you to buy. Now, obviously, if you're moving in a year or two, doesn't make sense. You can't afford it. You can't afford it. But it's a great time to buy if you can afford to buy. It's a great time to sell if it's best for you to sell. You need to find the best strategy for you and not let anybody tell you what you should do. And I'm here to help. Reach out at Bill Gross Probate, call, text, email, reply to this message, or put a comment. Love to help you if I can. I release these videos every Sunday on YouTube, and we send out via email on Monday morning. As always, make today your best day ever. Thanks so much.